Hi, it's Mike from Apollo, and we are back here on The Growth Engine, and we are joined by one of my favorite people of all. Her name is Lauren Calautti, and she has perhaps the greatest title in business history, Chief Revenue Rocketeer. There is so much to ask and understand about such a person with such a special business title. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's awesome to be chatting with you with intention to support early stage and pre-revenue founders in our fabulous go-to-market 4-week sprint. Yes, but the name is catchy. It means that I am unapologetically in sales and all things revenue related. And indeed, I spend most of my time rolling up my sleeves with you, helping founders go to market and achieve amazing revenue targets.
Yeah, it's so fun what we get to do together, Lauren, because I think, we meet these founders who've been working so hard on the inside, on the product, and then you and I turn up together and we're like, so how about that growth thing? And they're like, huh? What? Well, how about looking outside, meeting customers, value propositions, and all that good stuff? It really does feel like what you and I get to do together is come along at a moment when someone's built something and they're ready to share it with the world and they just realize it's a little bit harder than they thought.
Yeah, exactly. So the first thing I'll say is that you're probably watching this video right now because you are totally obsessed with the product and the problem that you've gone out to solve. Where we jump in with our expertise is helping you apply that exact same, if not more, obsession towards your growth and your go-to-market strategy. So all things from identifying and challenging your ideal client profile, really narrowing down on your segment and your niche, and understanding what's the point of doing my TAM, SAM, and SOM, and what does that really mean to investors who, with all due respect, see many TAM, SAMs, and SOMs that have big, audacious promise behind them. But what's the evidence when it comes to the numbers?
Such a good question. Like, what's the evidence? I think that's kind of the whole thing, isn't it? Like, we've built this course, which is 4 weeks, taking you through a lot of those key things that you just mentioned. Oh, by the way, link in description if you want to actually jump in and spend time with Lauren and myself and guiding you along the way with the fabulous community of UTS startups, Soho. We've got a lot of people involved, right?
Yeah, the Founders Union. We're wearing our Founders Union
Let's go.
t-shirts created by Scalare Partners. So indeed, yeah, it's all about community and talking to people. And I guess that's where we can get the best cut through when it comes to our go-to-market, and identifying the things that we just mentioned, leaning on your community and those experts around you. If I pop my founder hat on and empathize with founders in general, you're here because you probably fit into one of 3 different categories. The first one would be you're really technical. The second one would be you're a deep domain expert. Or the third one would be you're neither, but you're super entrepreneurial and you know that you can solve a challenge and you're self-aware enough that you're going to surround yourself with the people who are technical and deep domain experts so you can execute on your startup and growth.
So I think those are some great archetypes. And I think what we also want to do a little bit is give people permission. You don't have to have all the answers, right? Like there's no human can be a great CTO, CPO, CMO, right? Like you do need to build a sort of a coalition of the willing, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I talk a lot about authenticity and what I find, so a little bit of a mindset hack as we're getting into our course content. A bit of a mindset hack is really owning what your strengths are and what they are not. We hear the phrase fake it till you make it, and I do subscribe to that notion, that's for sure. However, knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at and being authentic about that is so, so important as you're gearing up to go to market.
Well said. So we've built this 4-part course, 4 big sprints with 4 big topics. I've got my notes from the syllabus here, Lauren. I really want to call upon some of your expertise, some of the lessons that you've learned, and let's see if we can not only pull out some insights and wisdoms there, let's make sure that we take this opportunity to learn from you because you've worked with so many founders. I'm keen to see what are the patterns, what are the insights. So, week 1, defining your market. Now, the course that we have really goes through TAM, SAM, SOM, segmentation, value prop, and ICP. These are a lot of acronyms, but at the heart of it is figuring out who is the customer. Now, this is often, as you kind of alluded to, when founders do their first go to market and when they have to build it for the first time, they sort of realize, oh, wow, this is like a lot more complex than first thought. And it's often, well, a little bit more challenging and it's a bigger thing. When you think about your recent experiences, what are you seeing in founders when they attempt this for the first time? What observations do you have?
Yeah, thanks for such a great question. There's a couple of observations I see. So I'll start with your ideal client profile. So, first of all, as you're thinking about your business, your startup, and the problem that you're trying to solve, we can use AI, Claude, ChatGPT, whatever, to plug in and prompt and say, who is my ICP based on X? Right? However, the nuance and the piece we really need to be forensic about, Mike, got that word from you. Not the word, I guess it's the thinking,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So what we need to be forensic about is there's almost subcategories of an ICP. So we've got the person who's going to use the product and be the absolute advocate of the platform or the tech that you've built. We've got the economic buyer, so the person who owns the budget, and we've likely got a mobilizer. Now, the person who puts their hand in their pocket may be all three. They may be the end user, the person who's adopting the software or the product. They may be the person who's championing it, and they may be the person who owns the budget as well. But knowing that there are subcategories to the ICP and apply the thinking that you need to go after and expand your list for the person who pays the invoice. That is the most important persona that you need to nail and include as you're thinking about your TAM, SAM, and SOM.
I would imagine you probably see that a lot as you move, like for B2B, I think when you move up into the mid-market, they really do start to become very distinctly different people on the buy side.
Yeah, absolutely. We see a lot of B2B to C, right? So we see that startups might sell to a really big insurance company, just as an example, but the insurance company is the one paying the invoice for the platform or the product that you're helping them solve. But then we need to drive adoption to the insurance company's clients. So they're the ones that we need to nurture. So there's lots of different ways that we need to approach the ICP. What I'm trying to explain here is that you need to focus on the person who puts their hand in their pocket and pays your bill.
It's because it's actually, you're building quite a complex picture, right? Because, I might have to deal with 3 people, and let's use that example. I might have to deal with 3 people at the insurance company and then the 3,000 or 3 million customers that they have. So there's actually that's a lot of different personas and segments, and I've just got to make sure that I'm covering my bases. So I'm interested, do you see this thing that a lot of early stage companies underestimate this and then they get really bogged down because they're getting stuck because they're telling the story, if you will, for the user to the buyer who's actually concerned about the end consumer's story. And then that's why moving into mid-market and enterprise sales as a small business becomes extremely challenging, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And quite often we're building for that end user, right? So the pain perhaps sits with the end user
Yeah.
and the messaging, which we'll get into a little bit later, but the messaging needs to be really sharp for both the end user who's going to adopt and drive and refer your product, and then we need to be a little creative around how sharp and succinct are we talking about the problem that we're solving for perhaps the person putting their hand in their pocket.
Yeah.
Quite often, Mike, I see that go-to-market strategies consist of, I'd like to raise capital because then I'm going to invest in SEO. And that's how I'm going to get my first 1,000 customers. Unfortunately, in such a saturated market where we're in the age of distraction and we're dealing with adult attention spans and the rise of, really being pulled from pillar to post, we can all feel it, right? We are always on. We always have these tiny little devices called a mobile phone in our pocket where we can be pinged, even if we put the do not disturbs on. But if we're competing for attention and trying to get, again, that advocacy from our end user, SEO is just no longer a valid strategy to go to
Yeah. I
market.
mean, Lauren, I would have heart palpitations if a founder was trying to raise money to then sort of go to market and do some SEO. That should have been done way earlier in the picture. But the point that you're bringing up, like, moves us beautifully into the second week of the course, because that's when we start getting into the messaging. And there's a number of dimensions there. In the course, we talk about the anatomy of the perfect landing page, clear call to action, great messaging that really does vary appropriately to the different constituents that you might have in your prospect world. But when we get into this idea of messaging, I believe like the real DNA of this comes from what we do in week 1, which is a value proposition canvas. And at the heart of that is pain, gain, and job to be done. And I think that this is like the secret sauce to having a great message. Because if you understand the real job to be done in the eyes of the customer, not of inside in the company, what you assume it to be, but the reality in your customer's mind of what mission they're on. And then you understand the pains and gains that come along with trying to fulfill that job to be done. This is at the heart of messaging. And that kind of presents 3 options. We're at a crossroads, Lauren, because we can talk about the job to be done. We can talk about pains and gains. And so there's lots of options here. So once again, building a go-to-market, it's a bit tricky. When we get specific around great messaging and problem solution, what do you see that works? And what are some of the common pitfalls that founders experience here?
Yeah, thanks for such a great question. I guess just to dig into this a little further, your customers fit into one of 2 categories. They're either problem aware or they're not, or you're teaching them why they need to care about the problem that you're solving, right? And so if they're problem aware, it's likely that your approach is going to be the rip and replace approach, right? So you come in and you explain why you're better than what they're currently doing towards the problem that keeps them up at night, so to speak. And you're going to explain why you're faster, better, more efficient, and you're going to save them time and money. The second category when it comes to messaging is that you're solving a very valid problem, but you have to take your customers on a bit of a journey. It's that future thinking, that insight-led approach. So maybe their current approach is the status quo, or they do nothing, but you're there telling them why they need to invest. And you're helping them understand that you do spend money on this problem in a bit of a left field kind of way, but you're there to really teach them and be that thought leader And alas,
Yes.
your product and what you've built is the very antidote to solving the problem that you teach them about.
And what do you see, Lauren? Like, I would imagine, if I'm going after super problem aware versus I have to like educate the market, what are those go to markets? How are they different in style and rhythm and tempo? Like,
Yeah.
they feel very different to me.
Yeah. Look, it's a great question. The response is it depends. But if I was to give a couple of tactical tips, I would say that for the first scenario where your customers are problem aware and you're coming in with something that's efficient, cheaper, easy to kind of adopt, then you want to be short, sharp, a little bit more features oriented and make it effortless for them to buy. Really, really effortless for them to make the decision to go with you versus the incumbent. If they're not problem aware and you're teaching them, then definitely approach with thought leadership, education, nurturing, so that they can understand why they would invest in your particular solution. So I would say one is a little bit more features and benefits driven. The other one is insight led and somewhat disruptive.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think what I see often too here is founders are realize in taking, particularly when they have to educate the market, that it also takes a bit more time, right? Because you can't do like a Pepsi challenge shootout. Here's the de facto standard. Here's us. We're 10 times better. Here's a free trial. Away we go. What
Yeah.
people have to do is connect. Oh, you're kind of on this mission to do this, and you're trying to do this job. You loosely collect these weird things. Isn't that odd? Wouldn't it be better if there was an easier way? And you have to truly inform the market. That takes patience. And I think from a perception perspective, the hardest thing for a founder is that they see the need for it in a thought leadership, non-problem aware. But the challenge is most, if not everybody else, doesn't see what they see. I mean, that's pretty hard, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's another little frame here which I hope is empowering. If you're listening to this and going, I don't know which category I fit into, or I'm this or I'm that, just to really emphasize the importance of getting obsessed with your go-to-market and your growth strategy. CEB Research Organization conducted some research just over 10 years ago, which is still really, really valid today. And what they did is they went out and they surveyed thousands of B2B organizations whereby the customer had made a purchase decision. So, invoice paid. That's another thing I talk about. Like, what is a sale? It's when the invoice is paid, not just a verbal. But the customers that had made a purchase decision, and out of 4 key categories, what was the thing that won them over? So the first category was the value to price perception or ratio. Like, does this feel like it's lots of value and it's really well priced? The second category was the brand. Like, do I love and feel really loyal to the brand? The third category was the product. So how amazing is the product? And the fourth category was the sales experience. So one of those categories completely outweighed the others. In fact, 53% was attributed to that category as driving customer loyalty and adoption.
And the
Which
category,
one do
drum
you think
roll.
it was? It was the sales experience. So the sales experience drives your customers' loyalty by 53%, meaning this is really, really empowering for founders, right? Because they get product obsessed, obsessed on their brand, maybe a little obsessed on their price, which is important. It is part of the go-to-market motion as well. We don't cover that in this course, but we can speak to it as well. But it's really, really empowering to know that you are in positive control of the sales experience. And the attributes that make up a real world class sales experience is that you make it effortless for your customer to buy from you. You teach them something that they didn't already know. You tailor your conversation for them, right? And you take total control. So if we put our customer hat on, when we're taught something new and someone's offered us a perspective that we didn't already know exists, we are far more loyal and likely to buy from that particular
Right.
brand
Right.
than anything else.
Well, that kind of sets up a value exchange because you're paying it forward, you're being generous, helping them get an insight right from the get go that immediately creates that energy of like, oh, let's give this a try. So, very, very sage wisdom for getting the message right. But of course, we don't just stop there. We then say to ourselves in this course, part 3 is all about CRM, customer relationship management, getting marketing into sales, sales into service. There's so much in this. I'm very interested to the moment that you come in and meet founders and they show you their CRM startup setup. I'm very interested to know, like, what do you find? Because we talk about in the course the importance of capturing your leads, converting leads to deals, deals to pipeline,
Yep.
having a single source of truth. It can sound a little self-evident or obvious. So I want to just pause on that and say, what do you see in reality, in the wild, when you go and meet founders and you see startups and they show you what they're doing? What do you see? Where are the common mistakes and what are the challenges they have when they've got a great market, great message, but then you get to the CRM, like, what do you see?
Yeah. So, first of all, I talk a lot about being obsessed with the metrics that matter. And I'll tell you what metrics matter shortly. But before I do that, just a little shout out to our awesome friends at Zoho for Startups who have sponsored our 4-week go to market sprint. And we are so proud to be partnered with them because they are a founder led company with real values alignment to what we do at the Founders Union. And having a CRM, as basic as it sounds, is so important when you're in founder mode. And what we find is that so many people are still using Google Sheets, which is not really great at mitigating the risk within your business and your startup. So to come back to your question, Mike, the metrics that matter and the reason we want to get obsessed with using the CRM is that, first of all, AI is moving at the speed of light. So there's so many cool things that we can do within our CRM to scale and make our life easier with our outbound motion. All from deriving insights to capturing, and then also it links back to that evidence that I talked about, which is so important for investors. The metrics that matter the most, right,
Mm-hmm.
would be what are the average days to close a deal? What's your average sales cycle in days? Right? The reason I say days is because it's much easier to calculate and expand if we're looking at some financial modeling and projections for pretty specific amounts of time. The second thing is, what is your average price point per product?
Mm.
So, a philosophy I subscribe to is the power of 3. And often an output of your go to market is that there will be 3 pillars in which you shall go to market. Sometimes that means 3 alternative ways to generate revenue. So, what is your average price point per pillar and per product?
Gotcha.
Right? So,
Gotcha.
each might have a slightly nuanced ICP or segment niche. We can come back to that. The other metrics that matter is conversion rate.
Mm.
So it's great to say you've got a database of 6,000, but what is the conversion rate of people buying
Yeah.
from within that
Yes.
database? You're far better having 10 with a 50% conversion rate versus 6,000 with a 0.
But that's a funny thing, huh? Because we can get addicted to those vanity metrics. We have
Yeah.
X amount of customers, and I often find like the big tell in this is particularly on freemium B2B products when you're like, okay, great that you have 10,000. What percentage are paying? And then you will often see founders like, oh,
Yeah.
wincy, wincy little amount.
Yeah.
Now, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's fine, particularly if it's showing in your CRM, because then you can start fixing it. If you didn't have the data in the CRM, you don't know the problem exists, so you're not fixing it, right?
Exactly. And we need to hold ourselves accountable to look at all the data that you can so efficiently capture within your CRM or within Zoho for startups. And you can reflect and make strategic decisions off the back of that. So we can't make decisions on what we don't know. And so if we are really, really disciplined about capturing all of that, then our likelihood to make smart decisions is far better.
Yeah, no, well said, well said. So just a bit of a recap. We've really kind of emphasized in week one, it's about really know your customer, know your niche. On the second installment of the course, we've really kind of harnessed this idea of the right message for the right person. And now we're like single source of truth. Everything's in the CRM. But now, Lauren, there's a little bit of a drum roll. We need to launch this go to market. And we've got a great set of activities, a checklist, because my gosh, the amount of times people forget to update everything in line with the go to market happens all the time. Two, we've got some outbound. And then third, and this makes you very happy, we've got a dashboard with all the metrics that matter. So there's quite a lot in that. What do you, when you're talking to a founder and say, hey, you're about to launch, we're in the locker room, we're about to run out on the field, what's Coach Lauren's words of wisdom as they're about to go out and launch their go to market? What comes to mind when they're going to make sure everything's up to date? They're going to start doing their first outbound motions. They've got their dashboard. What are some of the important things to keep in mind?
Wow. Great question.
It's
Big
it's
question.
almost a course in itself. I know that it's a bit naughty, but yeah, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it's honestly, it sounds so simple and straightforward, and probably a reason why you're watching this video is you have to channel your energy and your focus towards the people who are going to pay for your product. So whether that is a version of a pilot, whether it's a stitched together piece of consulting work and a little bit of the product that you've built that you've still got bugs and you're fixing, or it's something else, sponsorship or whatever, you have got to channel your energy and your focus towards the niche within your segment that you can easily get after. So those warm introductions that are going to pay the bills, pay the invoice. So right size that pricing so that it's within the delegation of the person you're selling to.
Yeah.
So you want to have a really short sales cycle in those early days with the view that, of course, when you increase pricing and complexity because the product has caught up with that motion, that you can do so, but you've got to focus on getting quick cash through the door.
So if I want to do that, and I've launched, like the product is live, everything online is up to date. Lauren and Mike told me to go and do an outbound motion, but I have to like go and find those customers you asked me to go find, the ones that are going to go pay for this service. What are some best practices if I don't really know where to start with that? What would you recommend? What's working for other founders?
Yeah, so going back to the inception of the business and why you built it and what problem that you are truly solving, sometimes we've built the product or the business based on a pain that affected us. And so if I can just dash back to ICP and segmentation, it's finding and replicating the people who are perhaps just like you in the sense of you're a particular demographic and you've got certain attributes because you are the ICP, finding more people that fit that mold. Or if it's not you because you're not the deep domain expert, it's getting influencers and multipliers and people who can advocate on your behalf.
Yeah.
So you're then nurturing them.
Yeah,
So,
so I hear two things there. Like, get yourself into a community or network of people that look like and feel like your customer.
yeah,
And remember that if you are your ideal customer, you need to like take that mindset when you go in there. Like, what was the problem that I originally started to solve? How are they experiencing it? And what happens if there's no event for my industry coming up and I really do need to like get people together? What sort of things, what sort of little tips and suggestions have you got for founders?
well, it's mostly free to do something virtual and online. So I say get after it and create it yourself.
Yeah, because like there's no problem having a webinar. And don't underestimate if you're working on something that matters and you say, hey, come on, join for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and we're going to solve for that problem. If the problem matters enough, you will get people interested, right?
Absolutely. That's right. It does also tick tack back to the messaging piece and making sure that you've nailed your commercial messaging that piques people's interest enough that they would want to sign up to or subscribe to whatever your hook is to nurture and then achieve conversion off the back of whatever
Yeah.
your initial kind of warm up is.
Yeah, and I guess a good note there is think of yourself as building a community, and maybe those people need some time before they become customers. Like, don't be bummed out if you don't get like a large conversion rate at the beginning, because maybe it takes time to nurture people through the funnel, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Mike, there's multiple ways to go to market, right? We can do it via a direct sale. So that's the old school, so to speak. I know Mike, I'm going to email him or send him a LinkedIn note and I'm going to set up a time to do a demo and we're going to go through the motions of the sales process and Mike's going to say yes in around 4 weeks and I'm going to issue an invoice for 20 grand and he's going to pay it and subscribe to my product for 12 months. That is a direct sale. The other way to go to market is through referrals. So you may not have access to your ICP. By way of reminder, your ICP are the people who are putting their hand in their pocket to pay your bill, but you may know people who do. And so you nurture your referrers and you make life easy for them to provide a call to action to your ICP that they've got access to, which ultimately leads back to you getting in control and you getting the contact information of that person. So whether that goes through and flows as a direct sale or there's a digital flow that they have to go through to sign up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The other way to go to market is through technical integration. So a little bit more complex, and this is probably absolutely spot on for the technical co-founders that join us. However, if you are aware of what you've built and how it's a true complement to other technology
Yes.
that your ICP has already adopted, It is wise for you to think through a technical integration as part of your go to market strategy.
Absolutely. Like what comes to mind is how successful Zoom was by building their Google Calendar integration. I mean, that was their sales and distribution department for like years. COVID happened, boof, and the rest, as they
It's
say,
history, that's
is history.
right. There's other ways, and I will continue. So we can do a partnership model, which typically implies zero investment upfront, but some sort of revenue share, whether it's a percentage for each party or it's a fixed fee. Whatever you kind of surface and negotiate, there's the partnership way to go to market. I mean, even better if you can convince said partner to pay for your product front, right? And then they can work out what the commercial model is for distribution. But in lieu of that, securing those partners contractually and having a really robust commercial model and revenue share agreement is another way to go to market. Then there's obviously the digital path. So I mentioned that SEO has died. We're now looking at AI optimization and how we build our motion through various different
Yes.
tools.
Yes.
And that's certainly another really valid way to go to market.
So many options, right? That's what I want to bring us back to what we started with at the beginning. Like product, it's a big thing, but growth is equally a massive universe full of many, many options. I mean, that's why it's so important to reduce down at every step of the way, to be highly focused, metrics that matter, choose your niche, have messaging that's just crisp. I think we should take a moment just to reflect on why we built this course, why we think it's really important to build your go-to market in this way. Lauren, like in the bigger picture of things, why does going to market and growth, why is it so important for founders?
Revenue is the lifeline of the business, right? So when we can get cash through the door, we can grow. There's lots of ways to raise capital, but I feel the most underappreciated way is to think about how you can keep all of your equity and really nail your go to market motion through best practice
Yeah.
insights and tips.
Crazy tip. How about your customer is your source of capital, right?
Yes. Yes. And it's such a full circle because if you are building for a problem that truly matters, and we trust that you're already past that point of validation, things like willingness to pay, product market fit, all your user testing and surveys and all those fabulous things. If you've nailed that, then you're here. Therefore, this stuff should be effortless.
Yeah. And I think also too, you created the product for a reason and you want to help lots of people. And that's what growth does. That's how you can have some impact. That's how you can leave a legacy with your work, your product, your team. It's really how you can contribute in the world around you. So building your go to market and doing our fab course is one step in that direction, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right, Lauren Calautti, Chief Revenue Rocketeer at Scalare Partners, and many other wonderful things as well. Thank you for talking with me today, and I look forward to seeing you live with all of our students, right?
Thank you. Yeah, very much so. Thank you so much for a great conversation, Mike.
You're really welcome, and thank you to everyone that's been watching. We'll catch you next time.